A blizzard howled across the mountain pass, turning the world outside Silver Hollow, Colorado, into a blur of shifting white. Officer Abby Morgan gripped the wheel of her police SUV, knuckles white against the dash lights, every muscle taut. She was new to town, barely 6 months into the job, barely known by her neighbors. But she already understood what the locals meant when they called these winters hungry. Roads vanished. Sound muffled. Sometimes the only way to know you were still alive was by the cold stinging your face. Her headlights barely punched through the swirling snow, but suddenly something darted across the beam, a flash of dark fur, then a stumble. Abby's foot slammed on the brakes. Her SUV slid, shuddering to a stop sideways. Out in the road, just yards ahead, stood a battered German shepherd, its coat flecked with frost and a fresh cut glistening red against the gray. The dog's eyes met hers, startlingly human, haunted, pleading. For a moment the whole world narrowed to that gaze. The shepherd took a step away, then paused, looking back as if asking, "Are you coming or not?" Abby hesitated. Protocol said to stay in the vehicle. Her own common sense screamed at her. Storm, wild animal, isolation. But something about the dog's urgency, its silent, desperate need, dragged her out of the car before she could reason it away. Snow bit at her cheeks, instantly soaking through her uniform pants, but she followed the limping shepherd as it moved with grim determination into the forest. Branches clawed at her arms. The world behind, the SUV, the warm orange glow, vanished in seconds. Only the crunch of her boots and the shepherd's tracks marked their progress. Abby's heart hammered. Was this madness or fate? She didn't know, but she couldn't stop. The dog, moving through drifts twice its height, kept glancing back. In the gray-white blur, its presence was the only anchor she had. They pushed deeper. Wind screamed, snow rising and angry ghosts around her. Just as Abby's strength flagged, the shepherd stopped at a snowbank, pawing and whining softly. Abby staggered closer, heart in her throat. And there, half buried in snow, a flash of metal. She brushed away the ice. A battered military-grade locator beacon, blinking weakly, stamped, "Property of Nathan Wilder." A chill crawled through her that had nothing to do with the storm. Nathan Wilder, the missing K-9 rescue trainer, gone without a trace days ago. His disappearance had torn the town in two, especially after his family's tragedies. Abby stared at the beacon, then back at the shepherd, whose eyes seemed to say, "You're not done yet, not by a long shot." Suddenly, branches snapped behind her. Abby spun around, breath caught. For a split second, she imagined every bad ending, another lost soul in the snow, 2 more names for the town's tragedies. But it was only the wind. She pressed her gloved hand to the radio, fingers shaking. "Dispatch, this is Officer Morgan. I've located evidence connected to the Wilder case. I'm off Route 7, maybe half a mile north in the woods. I'm following." She hesitated, glancing at the shepherd. "A dog who seems to know where it's going. Send search rescue. Urgent." The radio crackled back. "Copy that, Abby. Stay safe. Back up en route." But the shepherd didn't wait. It turned and kept moving, further into the unknown. Abby followed, feet numb, mind racing. Each step carried her further from the world she knew, rules, safety, logic, and deeper into the place where only instinct and trust counted. Was she risking her life for a ghost chase? Or was this the very reason she'd come to Silver Hollow, seeking something she couldn't name, something wounded and wild and worth saving? Minutes dragged into eternity. Abby thought of every rescue she'd failed, every friend she hadn't saved. The shepherd kept glancing back, eyes burning with unspoken urgency. Snow stung her lips. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she kept moving. A sudden movement, something dark in the snow. The shepherd lunged ahead, pawing furiously at a drift. Abby knelt beside it, digging with her hands. Her fingers struck cloth, a piece of torn, weatherproof fabric. Abby's breath hitched, a trail, frantic slide marks, but no blood. The shepherd whined, circling. Abby's mind spun. Was Nathan alive? Was she chasing a phantom or a miracle? Thunder cracked. Somewhere above, a tree branch snapped under the weight of the storm, sending snow crashing down. Abby flinched, heart leaping into her throat. The shepherd barked short and sharp, a warning, a plea. Abby stood, her knees weak. She looked down at the battered dog, its body trembling with cold and exhaustion, but its eyes never leaving hers. This wasn't just any rescue. This was something different, something that would change her, and maybe the whole town, forever. The storm howled. Abby wrapped her arms tighter around herself and followed the shepherd deeper into the wild, toward whatever secret waited in the snow. The forest swallowed Abby and the shepherd, now little more than shapes in a swirling white abyss. Her flashlight beam barely cut through the thickening blizzard. Each step was a negotiation with the ice. Trust the ground, keep moving, ignore the voice whispering that this was insane. But the shepherd pressed forward, never faltering, tail flicking, a silent metronome against the wind. Abby forced herself to stay present, focus. Every sense was heightened. Her phone vibrated. A text from Cole Dawes, seasoned SAR tech, ex-military, the kind of guy who could build a satellite phone out of an old toaster and a squirrel. ETA 5 minutes. Bringing June. Don't do anything stupid, Morgan. Abby huffed a shaky laugh. It was already too late for that. Her radio crackled. Abby, this is Cole. June's here. We're close. Give us a marker. Abby pressed the button with numb fingers, shouting over the gale. Look for my beam. I'm north of the beacon, just past the old fire road. The shepherd's leading. He knows something. Static swallowed her voice. In the darkness, another light flickered, then two more. Cole and June, bundled to their chins, burst through the trees. Cole's face was raw, but his eyes missed nothing. June was smaller, wiry, her face set in tight, habitual grief. Abby knew the Wilder family's pain. Jasper, the youngest, lost on a summer hike years ago. Nathan, missing now. This storm wasn't just weather, it was a curse Silver Hollow couldn't seem to shake. Abby waved, relief loosening her spine. I found the beacon, she called. And this dog, he's not normal. He found fabric, slide marks. There's more. The shepherd, Echo, June whispered, recognizing the scar along his muzzle, ignored everyone but Abby, eyes fierce, insistent. He whined, pawing at June's boots, then trotted back toward the woods. Abby didn't hesitate. She motioned the others to follow. The group plunged deeper. Trees pressed close, snowflakes sticking like icy confetti to their lashes. Cole muttered updates into his headset, every so often glancing at the locator app on his phone. June kept pace, her breathing ragged, gloved hands trembling, not from cold, but from something older, sharper. At a small clearing, Echo stopped short, hackles raised. Abby's breath fogged the air, mixing with the cloud of fear that seemed to hover over June. Cole scanned the ground with his floodlight, catching a broken harness half buried in drift. The buckle was stamped K9, Wilder. June let out a strangled noise, falling to her knees. It's his, she whispered, voice cracking. He wouldn't lose this unless... Cole knelt beside her, gentle for once. No blood. That's good. He pointed to the snow, smooth, then a sudden frantic scrape, a line of deep, desperate grooves. Somebody slid. Maybe Nathan. Abby felt a chill run through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. Echo barked, a short, urgent sound. He darted into the woods again. Abby helped June up, steadying her with a hand on her shoulder. We're finding him. Together. I promise. June shook her head. You can't promise that. You weren't here when Jasper... Her voice trailed off, a raw wound reopening. Abby looked at her, really looked. June's eyes were wild, desperate. You can stay at the edge, Abby offered. We'll bring him back. June's face twisted, pride and grief warring inside her. No, I'm coming. Her voice trembled, but her feet moved. Echo's uncanny focus kept them on track, his nose glued to the ground, ears flicking at every sound. He ignored the others, only glancing at Abby when the path forked, as if waiting for her approval. Cole grumbled, that dog's more stubborn than my ex-wife. Abby shot him a look. She was grateful for the levity, for anything that kept the cold fear from settling in her chest. Minutes blurred. The storm thickened. At one point, June doubled over, retching. Abby wanted to stop, to give her a moment, but Echo barked, frantic now. He led them to a snow-shrouded bush where a crumpled backpack poked out. Abby unzipped it with shaking hands. Granola bars, a flare gun, a blood-stained bandage, and a folded scrap of paper. Cole read aloud, voice steady. Sheltering in the cabin, injured, out of food, following Echo. Don't stop. Nathan scrawled, desperate but alive. June's knees gave way. She dropped into the snow, tears streaming, not even bothering to wipe them away. He's alive, she whispered, over and over. Cole squeezed her hand, jaw tight. Abby closed her eyes for a beat, letting the relief crash over her, then guilt. What if they were already too late? Echo whined, pacing in a tight circle, glancing at Abby with urgent intensity. Abby nodded, voice hoarse. Let's move. Echo, show us. The shepherd didn't wait. He plunged ahead, leading them down a treacherous ravine, snow falling in sheets, darkness closing in. June stumbled, nearly falling. Abby caught her, steady and strong. You don't have to be okay. Just keep going. June nodded, lips pressed tight, refusing to let the storm win. At the base of the ravine, Echo barked sharply, digging at a drift. Abby and Cole rushed to clear the snow, hands burning from cold. Beneath the powder, a battered survival pack and a length of paracord, knotted and torn. The trail was fresh. Nathan had been here maybe hours ago. Cole checked the GPS. We're less than half a mile from the old trapper's cabin. If he made it that far. His voice trailed off. June's hands shook as she pulled a threadbare scarf from the snow, pressing it to her lips. Abby knelt beside her. He left these for us. He knew someone would come. June sobbed, then managed a shaky smile. He believed in Echo. He never gave up. Above them, the blizzard howled. Echo stood at the edge of the clearing, body tense, gaze locked on Abby. In that look, unblinking, unwavering, was a promise, a demand, a bridge across grief and hope. Let's go, Abby said, her voice quiet but sure. Let's bring him home. They set out together, battered by the storm but lit from within by the fragile, fierce hope that somewhere ahead, past fear, past loss, past every ghost of winter, Nathan was waiting, alive. Darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating, as Abby, June, Cole, and Echo fought their way deeper into the wild. The storm eased its assault for only a moment, just enough for Echo's battered paws to find a half-hidden track through the pines. Abby's flashlight caught glimpses of fur and frostbitten branches. Every breath in her lungs felt sharp, but she forced herself forward, never letting the shepherd out of her sight. The world was silent, except for the crunch of boots and the determined scrabble of Echo's claws. Abby tried to shut out her doubts. Her mind kept flashing back to a different winter, another desperate search, the face of a partner she'd failed to bring home. She tried to bury that memory beneath the urgency of now. Of Echo, of June's grief-worn eyes, of the battered family waiting on hope. The trail narrowed into a gully where snowdrifts rose to their thighs. Cole slipped, swore under his breath, and leaned heavier on his walking stick. Abby bit her lip. She knew he wouldn't admit how much his old injury slowed him. June trudged silently, shoulders hunched, scarf pulled high to hide the tears that sometimes slipped past her stoic mask. At last, Echo stopped, chest heaving, and whined softly. Ahead, Abby's beam caught on a lump, a misshapen mound almost buried by the last gusts of snow. Echo circled it, nose pressed to the wood. Abby's pulse hammered as she brushed away the powder, uncovering a warped door, nearly indistinguishable from the hillside. She pressed her ear to it, straining to hear. Nothing but the wind. "Help me," she whispered, voice hoarse. Cole and June flanked her, and together they shouldered the door open. The hinges groaned, and the scent of damp wood and faint smoke wafted out. Abby's light swept across the cramped interior, a battered cot, a cold stove, a heap of blankets curled tight in the corner. "Nathan?" June's voice, impossibly small. The blanket pile moved. Echo lunged forward with a low whine, tail wagging uncertainly. From the shadows, a face emerged, pale, bearded, eyes ringed with exhaustion. Nathan Wilder blinked against the light, confusion giving way to something almost like relief. He tried to sit up, but collapsed with a ragged gasp. "Don't move," Abby said, her training snapping into place. She was across the room in seconds, her hands checking pulse, airway, injuries. Nathan's leg was twisted, bruised and swollen beneath layers of frozen denim. His lips were cracked, his hands shaking with cold. "I knew." Nathan's words failed. He looked at Echo, then at June, tears bright in his eyes. "You found me." Abby wrapped a thermal blanket around his shoulders, pressing an energy bar into his hand. "Echo brought us here. We're not leaving without you." For a moment, everything else faded. The storm, the ache in Abby's bones, the fear that had haunted all of them. June knelt beside her brother, wrapping him in a fierce embrace. She didn't say a word, but her shoulders shook. Nathan squeezed her hand, his own grip weak but determined. Echo curled tightly around Nathan's battered legs, body shivering with exhaustion. He licked Nathan's face, whining low and steady. He refused food, refused even to rest until Nathan's breathing slowed and color returned to his face. Cole built a fire in the old stove, his hands steady despite the cold. He handed June a flask, watched as she coaxed Nathan to drink. "He's hypothermic," Cole murmured, voice grim, "but stable if we keep him warm and hydrated." June tucked the blanket closer around Nathan, brushing the hair from his forehead. "You stupid, stubborn idiot," she whispered, but her words were threaded with fierce love. Nathan tried to laugh, but pain creased his face. Abby took a step back, letting the siblings have their moment. She watched Echo, who stood guard at Nathan's side, refusing to close his eyes even as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. Something about that silent loyalty, the way Echo positioned himself between Nathan and the door, caught at Abby's heart. She knelt, placing a hand gently on Echo's neck. The dog pressed into her touch, a tremor running through his frame. For a moment, Abby saw herself in him, carrying burdens, always watching, always trying to save the people she loved. Outside, the wind screamed and battered the walls, but inside the cabin, a fragile peace settled. Abby wrapped her arms around her knees and let her mind drift. The faces of her own lost friends flickered at the edge of memory. She thought of what June had said earlier, about not being able to promise anything, about the ache of old wounds never truly healing. She wanted to believe it was different this time. She wanted to believe Echo's faith could be enough for all of them. Nathan drifted in and out of sleep, muttering names, sometimes reaching for Echo as if anchoring himself to the world. June sat at his side through the night, shoulders finally beginning to loosen. She wiped her cheeks on her sleeve and whispered stories of Jasper, her brother gone too soon, the one Nathan had never stopped searching for, even in his own heart. Echo never moved. He stood watch at Nathan's feet, eyes fixed on the door. He didn't whine. He didn't sleep. He was a sentinel, a silent promise that nobody else would be lost on his watch. In the first gray light of dawn, Nathan's color returned. His breathing steadied. June exhaled, a sound that was half relief, half release. Abby sat in the corner watching them all, Nathan broken but alive, June finally letting herself hope, Cole dozing against the wall, and Echo, whose silent devotion had made this night possible. She thought of all the things they'd lost, all the pain stitched through their lives. But in that moment, something shifted, a tiny spark of belief, fragile but real, that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be made whole again. And as the blizzard eased and the sky softened to silver, Abby realized they'd all survived this night because of Echo's warmth, his loyalty, and the bond that, even in silence, refused to let go. 3 days after the rescue, Silver Hollow lay beneath a crisp blue sky, the last of the storm's snow glinting on rooftops. The roads were clear now. In the animal rehab center on the edge of town, Abby sat in a waiting chair, fatigue etched into her bones. She'd barely slept since the night Echo had led them to Nathan. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by something quieter, a bruised relief, a quiet awe. Inside the glass-walled recovery room, Echo lay on a blanket, his bandaged paws tucked under his chest. Nathan, pale and still weak but upright in a wheelchair, rested one hand on the shepherd's head. June sat beside him, never letting go, her fingers trembling as she stroked Echo's fur. Abby watched through the glass, studying how Echo seemed to sense every shifting mood. When Nathan's hand faltered, Echo nosed it gently, insisting on contact. When June's breath caught, tight with old sorrow, Echo pressed his body close, never pushing, just being there. A tech stepped in, soft-voiced. "You can go in if you want. He seems to need you folks more than anyone." Abby hesitated, then entered quietly. The room smelled of antiseptic and something else, fur and the memory of winter woods. Nathan managed a wan smile. "Officer Morgan, you look like hell." Abby cracked a grin, the fatigue loosening its grip. "Thanks, Wilder." "I could say the same." Echo's ears flicked as Abby knelt. He licked her hand, then flopped his head in her lap, sighing so deeply it sounded like a surrender. Abby glanced at Nathan. "He's refusing food again?" Nathan nodded. "Hasn't eaten since they brought him here. Not unless June sits with him." June blushed, looking anywhere but Abby's eyes. "It's like he's guarding us." "Won't rest, won't eat, unless he knows we're okay." Cole had told them Echo's story, bred for search and rescue, but more than just a working dog. Nathan, still hoarse, began to fill in the rest. Echo's not just a tracker. He was trained as a trauma support animal. He'd go into orphanages after fires, VA hospitals after deployments, group homes after things went wrong. Nathan's voice trailed off. His gaze drifted to the sunlight slanting through the window. Abby leaned back, absorbing the weight of those words. She remembered the way Echo had pressed close to her in the woods, sensing pain she never spoke aloud. There was something uncanny about his presence, his absolute refusal to let suffering go unnoticed. June cleared her throat. Her voice, when it came, was so soft Abby had to lean in. Jasper, my brother, he was the first one Echo found. After we lost him, Echo just sat by the spot in the woods where Jasper had vanished. Wouldn't leave. That's how Nathan knew where to look. He never found Jasper, but he found closure, I guess. Echo gave him that. Abby swallowed. The room felt thick with things unsaid, guilt, longing, the slow thawing of grief. June spoke to Echo, her words half-whispered. I hated you, you know. Thought you were just a reminder of what we lost. But you never blamed us. You just waited, like you were waiting for us to come back too. Echo lifted his head, eyes solemn, as if listening. He placed his paw, delicately, with the dignity of a priest, on June's knee. For the first time since Abby had met her, June let herself weep without shame, her face crumpling as she pressed her forehead to Echo's. Nathan watched, silent. His gaze moved between his sister and the dog, something shifting in his expression, a softening maybe, or simply the return of hope. Outside the window, a group of locals clustered around Dr. Meredith Cole, the rehab center's director. Arguments flared, voices carrying through the glass. Send him back to the search team, he's still got work to do. No, let him retire, he's earned it. He's part of this town now. Inside, June wiped her face and straightened, her old sharpness returning. So what happens to Echo? She asked, looking from Abby to Nathan. Abby shook her head. It's not clear. Some people want him back on rescue. Others think he should be adopted. He saved Nathan. He saved a lot of people. But he's not just a tool. Her voice gained strength, echoing something fierce inside her. He's more than that. He chooses what matters. Nathan looked down at Echo, the weight of the decision plain on his face. He always did. A silence settled over the room. Outside, the debate grew louder. Abby stood, feeling the old itch of duty, but also something new, a protectiveness that surprised her. We'll do what's right, not just what's easy. Echo deserves that. Nathan nodded, squeezing June's hand. June smiled, her lips trembling. Maybe we all do. As the sun sank, casting golden lines across the snow, Abby watched Echo finally close his eyes, breathing slow and deep at June's feet. For the first time since the rescue, he looked truly at peace. Abby felt something loosen in her chest, a knot untied, a burden she hadn't known she was carrying suddenly lighter. Dr. Cole entered, clipboard in hand. We'll have to decide soon, she said quietly, eyeing Echo. He's special, but the town is divided. We can't keep him in limbo. Abby met her gaze, steady and sure. We'll figure it out. Echo's shown us what loyalty looks like. Maybe it's time we show him the same. Night crept in, soft and blue. Echo slept, June by his side, Nathan's hand resting on his head, a circle of quiet resilience. Outside, Silver Hollow buzzed with opinions, but inside, healing had already begun. And as Abby stepped into the hallway, she realized the thaw had started not just for Echo, not just for June and Nathan, but for herself, too. The scars of old failures, the ache of never enough, they felt softer now, touched by the silent comfort of a dog who had rescued more than one life that winter. A pale winter moon hung over Silver Hollow as the town's meeting hall filled to the brim, heated air swirling with the scent of pine, old wool, and anticipation. Abby stood near the back, feeling both exposed and invisible, watching people she'd only recently started to know filter in. Store owners, teachers, teenagers with snow still melting in their hair, even a few old-timers she'd never seen anywhere but Sunday church. Tonight, there was only one thing on anyone's mind: Echo. Inside, the debate simmered long before the meeting officially began. Voices ricocheted between the old oak rafters, some passionate, some practical, a few fearful. Doctor. Meredith Cole, director of the Animal Rehab Center, hovered near the stage, clipboard in hand, her brow furrowed with worry. Echo, sedated and recovering at the clinic, was the center of a storm he couldn't see. Nathan and June sat together in the front row, June twisting her scarf in nervous hands. Abby felt the energy ripple off her, the tension between her natural reserve and the love that had cracked her open these past days. Nathan looked better than he had any right to, thanks in part to the shepherd that everyone in town now argued about. When the meeting was called to order, Dr. Cole's voice trembled only a little. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to discuss what happens next for Echo, our town's newest hero, and maybe our most complicated resident. Should he return to wilderness rescue, be retired and adopted, or is there something in between?" Hands shot up. Some people argued with the blunt certainty of old wounds. "We need him back with the rescue team. There are lives at stake," barked a big man in a search-rescue jacket, his voice breaking with what sounded a lot like fear. Others called for mercy. "He's exhausted. Give him a home. He's not a machine," snapped a woman Abby recognized as Mrs. Tansey, who ran the bakery and still left treats on the steps for stray dogs. Abby stood, heart pounding, and raised her voice above the fray. "There's a third option. Echo has given us so much. Maybe it's time we let him choose his own path, not as a tool or a pet, but as his own kind of healer." The crowd quieted, surprise rippling through the room. She saw June's head lift, eyes shining. A teacher from the elementary school spoke up. "He changed the lives of kids who met him. Quiet ones, scared ones. They talk about him like he's magic." Arguments broke out again. Some were loud. "He's a dog, not a person. He's more than just a dog, can't you see?" But the heart of the debate had shifted. Instead of what Echo owed Silver Hollow, people began to question what they owed him. Nathan, his voice rough but clear, told his story. "I owe Echo my life. But more than that, he gave me hope when I had none. He was never just a rescuer. He was there for my sister and for me when no one else could be." June, who never spoke in public, stood slowly. Her words came out shaky at first, but found their strength in the silence that gathered. "Echo isn't just a hero because he saves people in the woods. He saved us, in ways most people can't see. When my brother disappeared, Echo waited with me. When I lost myself, he was still there. And when Nathan needed him, he found him again. He deserves to be more than just what we want him to be." A hush fell over the room. For the first time, Abby felt the collective weight of a town's wounds and its longing for healing. Dr. Cole tapped her clipboard, voice measured. "If Echo truly has a choice to make, perhaps we can arrange a demonstration. Let him decide, return to the wild or stay with the people who need him most." The room buzzed, a mixture of skepticism and awe. "What, like a test?" Someone scoffed. "A dog can't decide something like that." But June, standing taller now, looked straight at Dr. Cole. "You don't know Echo. You've never looked into his eyes. He knows things most of us can't say." The crowd was restless, uncertain. Abby stepped forward, planting herself beside June. "Give him the chance. Let him choose. And whatever he chooses, we honor it." A few people scoffed, but more nodded, thoughtful. The tide was turning. The next morning, plans spread like wildfire. A public demonstration at the Silver Hollow School courtyard, with Echo given a clear choice. One gate to the forest, another leading to a group of children and townspeople. Everyone would witness it. The stakes had become more than just Echo's future. It was a test of the town's ability to trust, to listen to more than just words. As the meeting ended, June found Abby near the exit. "I didn't know I had that in me," June whispered, voice raw from emotion and surprise. Abby smiled. "He brings out the best in all of us. That's his real gift." Nathan approached, his limp pronounced but his eyes alive. "You did good, June. You too, Abby. Whatever happens, Echo changed us." Outside, Silver Hollow lay quiet beneath the moon, the snow reflecting a pale hope. For the first time in years, Abby saw not just a town divided by old tragedies, but a place learning, awkwardly, to heal. At the animal center, Echo lifted his head as June entered, his tail thumping in recognition. She knelt, burying her hands in his fur. "Tomorrow, boy," she whispered. "We trust you to show us the way." And as night settled, Silver Hollow held its breath, waiting for a dog, wounded and wise, to lead them into the next chapter. Silver Hollow woke early the next morning, frost still glimmering on mailboxes and eaves, the air buzzing with the kind of anticipation that only happens when a small town puts its heart on the line. Children ran ahead of their parents, boots skidding across icy sidewalks. News crews pulled in from nearby counties. At the center of it all stood Echo, his coat brushed clean, his eyes clear but wary, as he was led through the sliding doors of the Silver Hollow school courtyard. Abby arrived first, scanning the crowd with practiced vigilance. She saw teachers corralling students, parents wiping at runny noses, the mayor chatting nervously with Dr. Meredith Cole near a folding table of coffee urns. Abby caught Nathan and June at the edge of the growing crowd, Nathan pale but proud in his wheelchair, June gripping his shoulder for support. For once, June wasn't hiding in the shadows. There was a steady, quiet courage in her posture, a readiness Abby had never seen before. The test had been debated all night. It was simple, at least on paper. Two wide gates, painted red and blue, stood at the opposite ends of the courtyard. Beyond the red gate, volunteers had prepared a well-marked trail leading to the tree line, signaling freedom and the wild, a return to Echo's old world. Beyond the blue gate, a group of children waited, some in wheelchairs, some with crutches, others simply anxious and watchful, clutching their teachers' hands. Cole Dawes stood by the red gate, giving Echo a last-minute pat on the head. "Don't mess this up, buddy," he whispered, but the nerves in his voice betrayed how much he cared. June crouched low beside Echo, smoothing the fur along his back. "Whatever you choose, I'll still be proud," she murmured. Dr. Cole called for quiet. "Silver Hollow," she announced, voice carrying over the crowd. "We're here today to honor a friend who's given us hope. The choice is his, but the lesson maybe is for all of us. Let's see what Echo wants." The crowd parted, a hush rippling through them. Abby met Echo's gaze from across the courtyard. For a moment she felt time slow, the cold, the wind, the trembling nerves of the whole town hanging in the balance. June unclipped Echo's leash. The shepherd hesitated, nose twitching. He looked first toward the red gate, the open forest. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Echo turned, his stride sure, moving across the cold stone toward the blue gate, toward the circle of children. One, a boy named Jonah, who had never spoken in public, knelt at the edge, hands trembling in his lap. Echo approached and sat beside Jonah, lowering his head onto the boy's legs. Silence shattered. The boy's mother clapped a hand over her mouth. Tears welled in June's eyes, then spilled down her cheeks. The crowd gasped. Then a wave of applause, sudden and wild, washed over the courtyard. Teachers wiped at their eyes. Parents hugged their children. Abby felt something in her own chest break open, the wound of old doubts suddenly exposed to the light. Echo didn't flinch at the noise. He simply stayed pressed close to Jonah, tail thumping softly. The boy, never one for hugs, wrapped his arms around Echo's neck. For the first time since his diagnosis, he smiled, a trembling, miraculous smile that sent a shiver through everyone watching. The mayor stepped forward, voice cracking. "I guess we have our answer." He turned to Abby and June. "Whatever Echo needs, whatever the kids need, we'll make it happen. This is something bigger than any of us." June stood, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "He chose us," she said, her voice quiet but fierce. "He always chooses the ones who need him most." Nathan caught Abby's eye. "Not every rescue happens in the woods, huh?" His tone was light, but his eyes glistened. Abby knelt beside Echo and Jonah, feeling the warmth of the dog's fur, the trembling relief in the boy's hands. "Looks like Silver Hollow just found its new guardian," she said. A local reporter snapped photos, and within hours Echo's story was everywhere. A dog who'd rescued a man from the snow, now choosing to help a boy find his voice. People began to whisper about a new idea, therapy dogs for kids and adults, a program born right here, under the cold Colorado sky. "Doctor." Cole scribbled notes furiously, her mind already spinning with plans. Later, as the courtyard emptied, Echo wandered back to June and Nathan. Abby joined them, her own hands shaking with the enormity of what she'd witnessed. "This isn't just about Echo, is it?" she said. "It's about all of us, learning to listen." June nodded, stroking Echo's head. "For the first time in years, I feel whole, like the pieces finally fit." Echo yawned, resting his head in June's lap, finally at peace. The townsfolk lingered, unwilling to let the moment end. Abby watched as the boy Jonah looked up and spoke, his voice soft but clear. Thank you, Echo. His mother sobbed openly, and the crowd erupted into fresh applause. That night, as stars crept over the mountains, Silver Hollow felt changed. A town not just witnessing a miracle, but becoming one. Echo, the silent guardian, had led them here. The future, once shadowed by grief, now shimmered with hope. A new program was born before sunrise, the Echo Project, pairing therapy dogs with traumatized kids and adults. And at the heart of it all, Echo slept soundly, finally home. The weeks after the test unfolded with a kind of quiet magic across Silver Hollow. No fireworks, no parades, just lives bending gently toward the hope that Echo had unlocked. The Echo Project moved from a whispered idea to reality faster than anyone expected. The school gym filled with applications, kids who had nightmares, teens who had stopped talking, adults still carrying invisible scars. Therapists and volunteers signed on. A handful of other dogs were evaluated, but everyone knew Echo was the heart, the touchstone for all the rest. Each morning, Echo padded into the new Echo Path Center, his limp still visible but less pronounced. Abby arrived before sunrise most days, sometimes with donuts for the staff, always with a quiet greeting for Echo. She watched the way he greeted every child, never loud, never pushing. He'd sit and wait, sometimes for minutes, until the most anxious of them would reach out. The change was never dramatic in the moment, but over time it was undeniable. One girl in particular seemed drawn to Echo. Tessa was 8 years old, brown hair always in her eyes, silent since her father died in a house fire nearly a year ago. Her mother brought her faithfully, eyes hollow with exhaustion and worry. At first, Tessa only watched from the doorway, fingers knotted in her sleeve. Echo waited. No tricks, no treats. He'd simply lie on his side, eyes soft, tail thumping when she came near. Days passed. One morning, Tessa entered the playroom, her steps slow and deliberate. Echo sat up, stretching, then walked over and dropped a chewed tennis ball at her feet. Tessa knelt, tentative, brushing her hand over Echo's head. She didn't speak, not yet. But when her mother arrived, Tessa was sitting cross-legged, her cheek resting against Echo's fur. June watched every session, notebook in hand. She'd started volunteering at the center, shadowing Dr. Cole, slowly rediscovering her old dream of veterinary school. She still carried her own pain, but each day with Echo and the children chipped away at the stone she'd built around her heart. Nathan, still on crutches, showed up too. Sometimes working with Dr. Cole to design therapy plans, sometimes simply sitting with Abby as the center's heartbeat hummed around them. He'd changed, grown softer, his old defensiveness replaced with something warmer, more open. Late one afternoon, Abby found herself in the observation room watching Echo and Tessa. The room was silent except for the sound of Echo's breathing and the distant hum of traffic outside. Tessa traced a pattern on Echo's fur, lost in thought. Then so quietly Abby nearly missed it, Tessa whispered, "Dog." Everyone in the center seemed to freeze. June gasped, covering her mouth. Tessa's mother burst into tears, her hand shaking as she pulled out her phone to record the moment. Echo lifted his head, nudging Tessa gently, as if he understood exactly what she'd accomplished. Tessa smiled, shy and proud, and whispered again, "Dog, good dog." Words spread quickly. The next session, Tessa said 2 more words, "Thank you," and hugged Echo so fiercely that even Abby had to blink away tears. Dr. Cole called it a breakthrough, but Abby knew better. It wasn't medicine, it was presence. Echo had simply waited, day after day, until Tessa was ready. June, inspired by Tessa's courage, called the admissions office at Colorado State. She stayed up late studying biology, writing essays about grief, healing, and what it means to listen without words. She told Echo everything, her fears about school, her guilt about Jasper, her hope that she could help others. Echo would curl beside her, eyes half closed, never judging, always present. Nathan, meanwhile, started sketching blueprints for a new wing at the center, one designed specifically for group sessions, animal-assisted therapy, and quiet spaces for families. He pitched the idea to Dr. Cole, who brought it up at the next board meeting. Donations trickled in, then poured, letters from across Colorado arriving with stories of children and adults hungry for the hope Echo had sparked. Abby, watching the center grow, found her own peace. The ghost that once haunted her, a partner lost on a winter road, the feeling she was never enough, began to fade. She started leading support groups, sharing Echo's story, gently reminding the town that healing is a long, winding trail, but it can begin with the smallest step, or the gentlest nudge of a dog's nose. Echo's story even made the local news, then the Denver papers. People wrote from all over the state, letters from parents, survivors, even strangers who'd heard about a silent dog who waited until someone was ready. The Echo Project became a movement. It wasn't about a miracle cure. It was about patience, presence, and letting people find their own way back. On the day Tessa read her favorite book aloud in group therapy, her voice trembling but clear, Echo sat at her feet, head cocked in approval. Abby caught June's eye, and both women grinned through tears. That night, June finished her application for veterinary school, sealing it with a sense of hope she hadn't felt since she was a child. Nathan rolled up his blueprints, ready for a new challenge. Abby stood outside the center, watching the stars glimmer over Silver Hollow, and thought, maybe this is what rescue really means. Not pulling someone out of danger, but walking beside them until they're ready to walk alone. And Echo, curled on his blanket, dreamed silent dreams of snow and warmth, loss and found family, and a town slowly stitching itself back together, one quiet miracle at a time. By the time Silver Hollow's annual festival rolled around in late March, the town had transformed. Banners for the Echo Project fluttered from lampposts. Bakery windows displayed paw print cookies. Volunteers set up booths along Main Street. Games, crafts, raffles, all raising funds for the center that had become the heart of the community. For the first time in years, the town felt alive. Abby stood on the sidewalk in her uniform, chatting with parents and offering directions to newcomers. Her reputation, once defined by her outsider status and quiet resilience, had changed. People stopped to thank her, some just wanting to share stories about the blizzard, about Echo, about how the shepherd's quiet presence had eased their child's nightmares or helped them sleep again after years of restless grief. Echo, the guest of honor, wore a blue ribbon tied to his collar. He trotted at June's side, tail high but relaxed, pausing patiently whenever a child wanted to pat his head or snap a photo. June looked lighter than she had in months, laughing as Echo made his rounds. She moved through the festival with a sense of belonging that once would have seemed impossible. On the main stage, a large hand-painted sign read, "Thank you, Echo." Nathan rolled up the ramp in his wheelchair, blueprints and a fundraising chart balanced on his lap. Dr. Meredith Cole stood at the podium, her usual seriousness softened by pride. Abby, June, Nathan, and Echo were called to the front as the crowd gathered, murmuring with anticipation. Dr. Cole began. Silver Hollow owes a debt to this dog, but also to every person who stepped up, who listened, who waited, who believed that healing is possible. Today, we celebrate Echo, but we celebrate all of you too. Applause rolled across the square, people standing shoulder to shoulder. June leaned down, whispering to Echo, "This is for you, boy." Echo gave her a gentle nudge, as if he understood. The most powerful moments weren't in the speeches, but in the children who came forward. Jonah, the boy who had once been silent, strode confidently to the microphone. Echo wagged his tail as Jonah cleared his throat, then said simply, "Echo helped me talk again. He made me feel brave." The crowd cheered, some openly weeping. Tessa stepped up next, clutching her favorite book. Her mother hovered, nervous, but Tessa's voice was steady as she read a passage about courage and kindness. Echo sat at her feet, head lifted, the picture of calm devotion. When Tessa finished, the square erupted in applause so loud Abby felt it in her bones. Abby scanned the crowd, seeing the impact rippling out, parents holding hands, teenagers grinning, elders nodding in approval. She felt something inside her settle, a hard-earned peace she'd been chasing for years. It was more than personal healing. It was the recognition that a whole town could change, if given the right reason. Nathan spoke next. He outlined his plans for the new wing at the center, detailing rooms for therapy, space for group sessions, and quiet corners for anyone who just needed to be. "None of this would have happened without Echo," he finished, voice catching. "And none of it would last without all of you." The fundraising thermometer soared as people lined up to donate. Dollars, notes, even hand-knitted blankets and leashes. Children brought piggy banks. Teenagers handed over tips from their after-school jobs. There was a sense that everyone was contributing to something bigger, more permanent than a single event. June watched from the side, a proud, awestruck smile on her face. She found Abby after the ceremony, pulling her into a quick, fierce hug. "I'm applying to vet school," she whispered, voice trembling. "I finally feel like I'm allowed to hope again." Abby squeezed her shoulder, eyes shining. "You always were." Later, as dusk fell, lanterns lit the square in a soft, golden haze. Families lingered, unwilling to leave the warmth of community. Abby, June, Nathan, and Dr. Cole stood with Echo at the edge of the stage, watching children toss balls for the therapy dogs and tell stories about their Echo miracles. Panic attacks soothed, friendships made, long silences gently broken by fur and patience. Abby found herself in a rare moment of stillness, reflecting on how far they'd all come. She remembered her first days in Silver Hollow, how wary the townsfolk had been, how she'd doubted her own choices. Now, she felt herself rooted here. The pain of her past losses hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined her. She glanced at June, who smiled and waved to a group of kids, and at Nathan, who was laughing with Dr. Cole about a dog-shaped cake someone had donated. The future seemed wide open. In the center of it all, Echo stood tall, tail wagging, accepting every hug and treat with gentle grace. He was no longer just a rescue dog, or even just a therapy animal. He was the living bridge that had brought the town together. The Echo Project received enough funding that night to expand, ensuring its work would continue. And as the festival drew to a close, people lingered under the lanterns, unwilling to break the spell. For the first time, Silver Hollow was united, not by tragedy or fear, but by hope and shared purpose. Echo had started as a stranger in the snow, and now he was the heart of a town learning to heal, to trust, and to love again. Early summer sunlight filtered through the windows of the newly renovated Echo Path Center, illuminating rows of folding chairs and the polished oak stage. The town of Silver Hollow gathered in force. Families, teachers, survivors, children nestled beside their therapy dogs, filling the air with the gentle thrum of nervous excitement. It was the grand opening, but it felt more like a reunion, a harvest of everything Echo had quietly sown across their fractured town. Abby stood backstage with Echo at her side, the shepherd's presence a steady, calming weight against her leg. She glanced out at the sea of faces, parents who had once been strangers now sharing nervous jokes, children clinging to fur or hand, June waving encouragement from the front row, Nathan beside her, his crutches set neatly by his chair. Dr. Cole arranged flowers on the podium, eyes glistening with pride. When Abby stepped onto the stage, a hush fell. Echo walked beside her, head high, tail sweeping the polished floor. Abby paused, scanning the crowd, the lines of anxiety and hope that marked every person present. She took a deep breath, searching for words that could reach everyone, the scarred, the lonely, the quietly hurting. "I've seen search teams with the best training miss what a single dog's loyalty can find," Abby began, her voice strong but unguarded. "Echo taught us that the loudest cries for help are sometimes silent, hidden in the snow or in the eyes of a child." She felt Echo lean into her, warm and real. "I came here thinking I could fix things. I was afraid of letting people down, afraid my own pain would spill out where everyone could see. But Echo, he didn't judge, didn't ask for explanations. He just showed up every day, quietly believing healing was possible. For me, for all of us." Abby's voice trembled, and for a moment she paused, lost in the memory of her own struggles. The icy road, the friends she'd lost, the years of guilt she'd buried beneath work. "He restored my belief in second chances, and in the power of simply being there for someone." She stepped aside. June took the stage, her hands shaking as she clasped the microphone. "After I lost Jasper, I shut everyone out, even myself. Grief is lonely, and sometimes it's easier to stay lost than let someone in. But Echo never left. He waited in the woods with me. He sat by my brother's bed. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to just not leave." Her voice broke, but she didn't look away. A ripple went through the crowd. Recognition, shared understanding. Abby squeezed Echo's collar, grateful for the dog's unwavering calm. The most powerful testimony came not from adults, but from the children Echo had helped. Jonah, once unable to speak, laughed as he tossed a ball for Echo, his words now easy, confident. Tessa stood before her classmates reading a story, her voice clear, the therapy dog at her feet snoring softly. Each story was a living proof. Sometimes what's broken isn't lost. Sometimes it's just waiting for the right kind of quiet company. Dr. Cole shared her own lesson. Loyalty transcends words. Echo showed us that you don't need language to notice suffering or to heal, just presence, just patience. The best rescue work is silent, steady, being there day after day until someone is ready to step forward. Nathan spoke next, voice rough but full. Rescue is never one way. Echo didn't just save me. We all found ourselves changed by each other, by being willing to help and willing to be helped. Pain became the ground for new dreams. June is going to vet school. I'm building a new future for the center. Abby found peace. None of us did it alone. As each person spoke, Abby saw the crowd shift, faces softening, hands reaching for others. The community that once hid behind closed doors was now a tapestry of hope, stitched together by the silent labor of one dog and the people who'd followed his example. She watched Tessa's mother as her daughter stood to read, a moment no one could have imagined months before. She saw men and women who'd never spoken in public wipe their eyes as Jonah laughed with Echo, and a sense of pride rose in her, fierce and vulnerable. As the ceremony ended, Echo pressed his head to Abby's side as if grounding her one last time. She bent, whispering for only him to hear. We all have trails to walk and burdens to carry. Sometimes the help we need comes with a bark, a nudge, or just a loyal shadow by our side. The center's doors were thrown open, families pouring outside into the bright morning. Children played with therapy dogs under the shade of old maples. Parents chatted and planned summer picnics. Silver Hollow, once a town marked by loss, now thrived on connection and vigilance, on the promise to listen for silent cries and show up every single day. In the end, the real lesson from the trail was clear. Healing isn't about fixing the broken. It's about refusing to look away, about being the person or the dog who stays, who listens, and who leads the way out of darkness. That is how lives and towns are changed, one silent miracle at a time. Sunset spilled gold over the hills behind Silver Hollow, the sky ablaze with color as the last day of the Echo Path Center's grand opening drew to a close. The air smelled of wildflowers, grass, and wood smoke. On the hillside trail above the center, Echo walked at Abby's side, leading a slow procession. June and Nathan, several children with their therapy dogs, Dr. Cole and the townspeople who'd become family through a winter of hardship and hope. No one hurried. They strolled in an easy silence, the kind that comes only when burdens are finally shared. Echo moved from child to child, pausing to nudge a boy in a wheelchair, then circling back to check on Tessa, whose hand rested calmly on his back. Each child had their own scars, visible or not, but laughter and soft conversation floated on the breeze, replacing the fear and suspicion that once haunted Silver Hollow. Abby's boots crunched on the path. She watched Echo, feeling a deep warmth bloom in her chest. For so long she'd fought the ghosts of her past, believing she could only belong by being unbreakable. But here, with Echo leading the way, she understood that strength wasn't about walls. It was about presence, about walking together through uncertainty and letting others see your scars. She glanced at June, who was chatting with a little girl about veterinary school and dreams for the future. June's smile was real now, unafraid, open. She walked with one hand on a rescue dog's harness, her shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. Some scars never leave, June said, catching Abby's eye and grinning. But walking together, they stop hurting so much. Nathan followed, still using crutches but grinning as he helped one of the smaller kids toss a stick for the dogs. The trails behind the center, once lonely and overgrown, now pulsed with new life and laughter. Even Dr. Cole, normally all business, stopped to listen as Tessa told a story about Echo's superpowers. How he always knew when someone was sad, how his silence was never empty. At the trail's summit, the group paused to take in the view. The center below glowed with lights and activity. Volunteers cleaning up, parents gathering children, a group of teens painting a new sign for the next summer's camp. Beyond that, Silver Hollow's rooftops shimmered in the golden light, peaceful and alive. Abby sat on a fallen log, Echo pressing his weight into her side. For a while she watched the sky turn pink and violet, feeling a rare, quiet gratitude. He rescued more than Nathan, she thought. He brought us all back to ourselves, back to each other. Jonah, the once silent boy, flopped beside Echo and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. "Best friend," he whispered. Tessa giggled, her therapy dog curled at her feet, as June told her about all the animals she hoped to help one day. Nathan dropped next to Abby, breathing in the dusk. "Did you ever think you'd see this?" he asked, voice soft. "Not in a million years," Abby replied, her eyes shining. "But I hoped, and I followed a dog who never gave up." A gentle hush settled. Abby watched the group, wounded, healing, perfectly imperfect, and realized that every one of them was both a survivor and a guardian in their own way. Echo was only the beginning. The ripples from his loyalty had transformed not just Nathan's fate, but the course of an entire town. She stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. "Let's head back," she called, but nobody rushed. The children lingered, tossing sticks, daring each other to race Echo to the edge of the clearing. For a moment, all the sorrow of the past seemed to dissolve into twilight. As the group made their way back down the hill, Abby knelt to hug Echo, pressing her cheek to his battered head. The children gathered close, listening. Abby looked up, her voice full of conviction and quiet emotion. "If Echo's story moved you," she said, "please like and follow our channel. And remember, sometimes the greatest heroes don't need words. Be the person or the dog who stays, who listens, who leads the way out of darkness. That's how we change the world, one silent miracle at a time." She smiled, standing as the kids cheered and the last rays of sun danced on Echo's fur. The path home was bright, and as the group walked together into the deepening evening, it was clear that Silver Hollow had finally found what it needed most, not just healing, but a future built on presence, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between people and the animals who walk beside them. And somewhere ahead, always just in reach, Echo led the way.